Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my spoiler discussion for Spider-Man Homecoming. Of course, if you guys don't want any spoilers, I did do a spoiler-free review. I'll put a link in the description of that if you guys want to check it out. The first thing I want to get right into, though, for spoilers has got to be Vulture. I mentioned this in my spoiler-free review. I never thought I would like Vulture as much as I did in this film, and he was freaking amazing. Michael Keaton did an epic job playing that character. He was great as this guy, and it was such a great story for the character, too, because it was one of those stories where it's like, he's the bad guy, but he's doing it for like good reasons, but it's always like means to an end sort of thing where it's like, I get where he's coming from. I just don't think I would have done that, and it's just like a great way to do it where it starts off at the end of the Avengers, and they're actually like in I forgot exactly where it was, the train station, but they're in the spot where like, Hulk ends up punching Thor, and I was like, oh, that's really cool how they did that. How is this about to play out? And it's so simple. It's the dude who owned like a scrapping company. And it's like, yep, you guys are effed. Get out of here. No money. All that money you spent, total waste. And surprise, surprise, the people that took over for your job are the same people that caused your job to, be required. But, all that money you spent, it's gone. We got paid for basically creating the destruction as the Avengers, and now Tony Stark as an individual as well, because it's like, none of the other Avengers have stock in that. But Tony Stark himself is now being paid, or contracted and paid to be the one to clean it up. And it's like, wow, that's insane. He got paid for causing and cleaning, and I just wasted money starting to clean and then got kicked out. So it was a great way to kick off his character where it's like, man, that makes sense. I just can't hate that. Like, that's such a logical conclusion where he just got so screwed over by the big man, the big companies and like the rich people sitting there in towers, literally, in Tony Stark's case. And it was just so well done. I was like, that's really cool. And then we get into him actually being the Vulture and being the villain. First off, the costume was just super freaking sweet. I loved it like the whole way through. I was like, man, Vulture just always looked kind of meh to me, like almost just dumb. Because he's, especially with him being like the old balding dude, and then he's got the bright green skin tight outfit with some feathers. This just looked badass. Like, he's wearing like, like a flight suit and everything, and he's got the mask and stuff because he's, going up to crazy high elevations, and that was really cool. And then it gets to the end of the movie, and it just got bad. It was just literally, his character just got more and more entertaining as the film went on. And we get to that part where Peter goes to his house, and he just opens the door. I think a lot of people had like the same thought process where the first thought in my head with him being the villain the whole movie, I was just like, oh crap, he knows who Peter is. Because I was wondering, because it was based on the trailer, and it actually does end up being being that case where from the trailer I was like, it seems like somehow Vulture ends up finding out exactly who Peter is. But the movie was going on for so long, I was like, oh, I guess that never happens. And then he opened the door and I was like, oh crap, I guess it was just like behind the scenes sort of thing. He figured it out, and that's what I assumed happened. It was like, nope, that's actually just her dad. I was like, huh, that was a cool little twist. Some people probably saw it coming. I never did, though. I just never considered it where it was like they would ever be connected, as characters. So I thought that was really well done. And then, it keeps going, and I was wondering, I was like, is it actually going to happen? Or was that just, misconception? Because it's a trailer, so you never really know if things, taken out of context. So I'm like, I can't tell if that's really about to happen. And then it's like, so you're in Washington, D.C. He basically pulled what I think we all expect to see in literally everything superhero related. It was like, so Spider-Man was there, and you were there, and then Spider-Man's always doing this random thing, and you're supposed to be doing this other thing, but you always disappear. Crazy. And he figured it out like a normal human being. He figured it out, and I like that. And it was just like, we were at the house, especially when they talk about the party, which I love, and she was like, you were there for like 2 seconds. She was like, what? No, I wasn't. And of course, that was when, Peter like really first got involved with them, because he was taking on, I guess, the first shocker and then the second shocker at the same time. But I loved that. I was like, oh man, it's about to get crazy. And I love that scene. The scene with them in the car is without a doubt one of my favorite two scenes. Like, pretty much any scene, oddly enough, where Peter is either being confronted like by a murderer or confronted by Tony, great scenes. Because the part with him and Tony is one of my favorite parts of the whole movie as well. Especially when he's like, if you cared, you'd actually be here yourself. And Tony just like popped out the suit and he's like, oh shit. And he started backing up and stuff. I love that. Like, that was a great scene. And then when they're in the car, And the first thing he does when his daughter gets, he's like, y'all give him a little dad talk and stuff. And he just reached down and had a gun and was just like, all right, and just had it like sitting on the seat, like holding it in his hand in front of the seat next to him. I was like, this is a great freaking moment. It's just like, you're gonna walk away, none of this happened. Like, that is your option. You just don't be a hero in this case, show my daughter a good time, and it's simple. But of course, Peter has to be the hero, and I love that scene. And of course, that's when he actually ends up fighting, you know, the actual Shocker. So I thought that was cool, and I love the way they did Shocker. Like, pretty much all the references. This is probably, and once again I mentioned this in my spoiler-free review, probably one of my favorite movies in general, like, as far as like comics go. Probably one of my favorites as far as the references that they make, and it was a lot of references, especially for like Spider-Man in general. There were like a million different things in here, and they had some other references, of course. There were a ton of different things that related to the cinematic universe, not just character appearances. Like, okay, of course, obviously Tony Stark is in it. The stuff with Captain America was great because I didn't even think about it until they made the joke when it's like, oh, you know, here's him in like his old Avengers 1 outfit, and he's like, you know, he's like the fitness test dude, and then the coach was like, you know, I'm pretty sure this guy's like a war criminal now, but whatever, we got to do the test. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like, it's funny, like they still use those tapes because they have them. It's just like, whatever. It's just the random old tests that mean nothing to you whatsoever. It's just like, yeah, he's probably like a war criminal technically at this point because of the Soviet Accords. Which they talk about, like during like the montage where Ned is like constantly asking a million questions. Their teacher talks about that, like he's like, you know, in the, you know, Soviet Accords and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's like, you know, super quick reference, but I love that, like little stuff like that. And then, you know, that's just like the movie cinematic universe. As far as like Spider-Man himself, they made like a billion references. There are so many things. There are literal scenes from the comics. The scene where he's going to fight Vulture at the end of the film. Love that, where he's pinned down and there's like I don't know, like the pieces of the building that fell on him and it's too heavy for him to lift it. I love that scene. Like for some people, because I have watched some reviews, so some people of course don't know that's from the comics, and it does actually seem like that moment where it's like, oh, that, you know, that bit of memory where it's like, oh, that person said something super inspirational and I just remembered it in this moment. But that is straight from the comics. That is one of those moments where Peter, he was about to die, and I don't remember the exact sequences. I don't remember exactly if that's how it happened, where he remembered what someone else said, but I know that specific moment, like how they shot it, was exactly like the comics, where he was about to die, and it was even more dramatic in the actual comic because he was like pinned underground, and it was like water filling up, and he's like, crap, I can't lift this is too heavy for me. And he like found the strength to actually lift this thing that was far heavier than anything he's ever lifted. So when I saw that in the film, I was like, that is awesome. Like, I just love that, how it connects so well to the comic books. That would have been awesome if they, for, you know, it wouldn't have made sense. But if water just started like pouring upwards, like they hit a pipe, I don't know. But I was like, man, that would have been awesome if that's how intense it got. But it was a great moment, like him freaking out, and he's like screaming for help, and there's nobody there. Like, he's just screaming and saying like, help me, help me. And I love that moment. I thought it was really well done. And he, you know, he does get that courage and strength, literally strength, to lift himself up, just like in the comic book. So I love that moment. They referenced Miles Morales, which was great. I love the fact that, you know, of course, everybody was saying the same thing. It was like, all right, well, Donald Glover is basically the reason Miles Morales exists, because he mentioned a long time ago in one of his stand-ups, like, I would love to be Spider-Man. And that's pretty much kind of where the concept of Miles Morales actually kind of came from. And he's been Miles Morales before. He has voiced him in, actually, The Ultimate Spider-Man. He voiced Miles Morales in that cartoon, and it was really cool. But of course, he couldn't be Miles Morales because Miles Morales is even younger. I mean, they could technically switch it up where Miles Morales is older, but that wouldn't make any sense. And he's like older Spider-Man, or he's just an adult who becomes, you know, Spider-Man later. And it's like, well, that's kind of just dumb, because then he's even older than the younger Spider-Man, so it wouldn't make sense. But of course, it was like, all right, well, what's going to happen here? Like, what role does he play? Because the whole thing is like, well, he's so, you know, immensely tied, you know, to Miles Morales, and like, you know, people who actually care at least. What role is he going to play in the film? And of course, they did it perfectly. It was like, well, considering he's so incredibly tied to the character of Miles Morales, and everyone wants him to be Miles Morales in some regard, they at least made him Miles Morales' uncle. And I loved that. I thought that was a great way to do it. As soon as he showed up and he was like, you know, I want to rob people, I was like, he's the Prowler. Like, as soon as they showed him, and then they actually have a portion, the part where Peter finds him and they have like the name show up and stuff. On like the bottom right, it says his name, and then it says the Prowler, and then it says his last name. And I was like, yep, that's officially him. But it was just great, and I was like, I love that. I love that they set that up, you know, like 10 years in advance. But it was still awesome. It was like, that's a great way to do that, where they have him in here and he still has that attachment to Miles Morales. Just for people who actually give a crap about that, like nerds like me, it's like that's a great way to do it. Where of course he's technically too old to play the character, but he can play the uncle, and I thought that was a great way to do that. So he still has that tie to Miles Morales as the person kind of kicked off that whole idea to begin with. So I love that reference. I love, just the reference in general. It wouldn't really matter if it was specifically him, but that's just like an added bonus. The fact that they made him the uncle because he was the one who set off the whole Miles Morales thing to begin with. I love that. So that was really great. They have other villains that show up in this. They have Scorpion, and I love the actor that got to play Scorpion. As a super nerd, every time I see that dude, it's freaking funny. Because for people who don't play games, he was a villain in a game called Far Cry 3. And every time I see him, all I think of is that villain. And I'll tell you, for anyone who might be like, I don't know if he'll be cool as Scorpion, that dude played one of the craziest characters that has ever existed in video games. Like, he is nuts. So you should just look up, like, the villain of, his name is Voss in Far Cry 3. That dude is a really good actor, especially someone who's crazy. He was calm in this movie, but I'm excited to see him play Scorpion in the future. And as that first post-credit scene actually kind of teased, that's some Sinister Six stuff, which I thought was very interesting because that was kind of one of the biggest complaints about Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it was like, they were teasing like, oh, Sinister Six so much. A bunch of people kind of hated it for that, but there are other things people didn't like about that movie anyway. But I was like, oh, that's very interesting that with this new, how franchise will say, I was about to say trilogy, but probably more than that at this point because this was actually great. But it was interesting. I was like, oh crap, they're already teasing the Sinister Six, which I'm totally fine with. I mean, based off of this movie, I can't wait to see what they do with that. I heard that he was actually supposed to fight them in the sequel, which won't come out until after Infinity Wars and stuff. So he will be, and of course, for anyone who hasn't seen like the backstage footage, he is already in Infinity War, so we will see Spider-Man show up there. Like, that will be his return. We don't have to wait until Spider-Man 2. He's going to be, in the Avengers Infinity War movie. So that's super awesome. I can't wait to see what they do with that. And some ideas, comic-based. I can't wait to see what they do there. But I thought that was great. I was like, all right, they got Scorpion showing up. And as soon as I heard his name, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's him. I'm not as familiar. It's not like, oh, Eddie Brock, Venom. Like, it's not like that. Or, Cletus Cassidy. It's not like instantaneous for me. But I was like, I definitely know that name. And then, of course, at the end, they made it super obvious because it was like, oh, he has a Scorpion tattoo. That's Scorpion. So I was happy that they did that. But I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Scorpion. And then with the neck tattoo, I was like, oh, yes, that's obviously Scorpion. But even when they first showed him and he had like the arm brace, I was like, okay, I recognize the name a little bit. And the arm brace made me think of like the suit and stuff and him being more damaged and he needed a suit, maybe change it up a little, like he needs the suit to stay alive compared to like the old version where it's like he just put the suit on and he was trapped in it. So like I was like, I'm pretty sure this is Scorpion, and then like I said, I saw the tattoo and I was like, yeah, that's definitely Scorpion. So love the references that they had where, even for people, like you would still have to kind of know, like it should be obvious, but anyone who only knows Spider-Man from the movies, they don't know Scorpion. Like I feel like, personally for me, mostly because of the 90s show, Scorpion is a big deal as far as Spider-Man is concerned, but he hasn't really shown up much, like animated wise, since like those old days. Like I felt like he was the biggest villain in like the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. He showed up, I felt the most. He was like a lower tier villain, but he was always there, like constantly. I felt like Scorpion was always in that freaking show. And he's even like the first boss in like, I don't know why I remember this, but he's the first boss in like that old 90s Spider-Man game that's based on the cartoon. He's the first boss in that. So like Scorpion has like this weird place for me in Spider-Man, but he's never really been like that insanely epic as a character. So I'm glad to see that they officially have a actor for him. I like the actor. Like I said, I think he does a great job as a crazy character. So we'll see how much of that they decide to bring in for Scorpion. But I'm excited. Sinister Six is awesome to me. Like that's insane, really, to say the least. Like Sinister Six, I cannot wait to see how they actually do that. And I hope it's done well, and I'm sure it will be. But that's just great. I can't wait to see that. But like I said, the references to the characters, Miles Morales, 10 years from now, Scorpion, love that stuff. I thought all of that was really well done. The actual scenes ripped, straight from the comics was great. They even do some stuff with the tech of the suit. It was like, okay, this is kind of a way to be like, hey, these random things that Spider-Man has had throughout the years, well, here you go. Like, they kind of just throw them in as, like, comedic bits, but they're in there. Like, the parachute, I was like, okay, I remember that I don't know how many times from, like, the 90s cartoon, where he's like, oh, crap, I'm falling, and then he makes, like, a parachute mid-air. It's like, okay, that's cool. We get to see the spider parachute. Of course, it's in the trailer when he jumps off the monument. He's got, like, the webbed wings, so I thought that was really cool that they utilized that. The different versions of the web and stuff like that I thought was pretty cool. And they have like the rapid fire mode, which typically is him actually moving his hands fast, but when it's tech based, it's just like he just holds it and then it just shoots out. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, just to show like that's a common thing for Spider-Man when he does that really fast, but they just made it, you know, tech based. So I thought that was really awesome. This was super random, but I swear for some reason I paid attention to this throughout like the whole movie. When he would web something and swing away, there were like multiple times they showed the shot. He's like off in the distance, but you still see like the strand of web like swinging in the wind. For some reason that like really made me happy. I don't know why, but I was like, for some reason I just thought that was super freaking cool. Like that was like such a random bit of attention to detail. I absolutely adored that. And I was like, man, he swung around the corner and you see the web just break off and then it like slowly floats back but with the wind. And I was like, that's just super cool. Don't know why that like made me so happy, but as a super nerd, it did. I was like, I just love seeing that. Every shot, it was like maybe, there were like 2 times for sure I remember it, but I feel like it happened at least 3 times where they show the web like actually go away, or you know, he lets it go and makes a new web and you can still see the strand kind of like floating in the wind. So I love that for sure. The scene with him on the ferry, I love the part where he's going through and webbing it. That was a great sequence with just like the speed of Spider-Man and him flipping and spinning, and like when he has everything together and he bends, like he ties all the strings together to keep them like really tight knit. I love that whole sequence, and he's, you know, using his tech and he's setting off the web bombs and he stick it to a column and then jump over and then it explodes behind him and goes across, and he's, you know, using his hands like the normal webs, and then he'd switch back and forth between the normal webs and then the little web bombs, and it was great. Like I loved all of that. Like, that whole sequence was really well done. Of course, it does remind you a lot of the Spider-Man 2 thing. That was something my girlfriend told me, where it was like, you know, that kind of bugged her, that it reminded her so much of that. And I definitely saw, like, even in the trailer, I was like, I feel like they maybe should have changed that a little bit for sure, because there are going to be some people where it's like, it does look almost exactly like, you know, the Spider-Man 2 thing where he's being, you know, pulled apart. So it was kind of weird that they chose to do it that way. It was still an epic sequence. I didn't care if it made me think of another, you know, really great sequence. It's one of people's favorite sequences from Spider-Man 2. So it didn't really bug me that it made me think of another great sequence, because this one was still absolutely fantastic in its own unique way. And it was really like the first time we actually see Peter kind of whooping people up, because that first fight, that changed way more than I expected. Where like, okay, he's beating the people up. I thought that was going to be like his first grand victory. It was like, no, he beat them up at first, and then it was like they popped out the gravity gun from Half-Life, and he was done. That screwed it up, and then like lasers start blasting off all over the freaking place. I was like, man, that did not go as I expected it to. So when he got to the ferry, that was kind of like the first time it was really a big battle, and he actually succeeded. And then unfortunately, it was like, oh, the FBI are here, and he kind of messed up that whole big investigation and this and that. I was like, oh, that really sucks. But then it led to a really epic moment with the ferry, and then another great moment with Tony being there and talking to him, and you know, being like the parent, which was crazy. So I love that for them, you know, utilizing Tony in that way. Him taking the suit back, which for anyone who saw like that second trailer where they basically gave away the second half of the movie, I was like, oh yeah, that's literally, that trailer gave away everything. It was like he screwed up with the ferry. Tony came in, took the suit, and then he had the regular suit for the rest of his old suit for the rest of the movie. I was like, wow, that trailer really did give away like the second half of the movie, but it didn't matter. It was still really freaking great. Of course, the final action sequence was good when he actually gets onto the plane and everything, and that was really awesome. And they have some funny stuff there too, like when he's crawling and the camouflage is reflective based. So he's crawling on it, and then it just reflects him crawling across like the whole thing, and it's like a Spider-Man jet. So I thought that was a funny sequence, but really love the way they did the action for sure. The scene where Peter is actually in Washington, the part where he gets trapped in the truck and he finds himself trying to escape, I love that scene. And he's like, you know, maybe I should learn how to, you know, all the different web tactics and stuff, the ricochets and just all that stuff. I thought that was a great sequence, and he's like talking, you know, to the voice. And I was like, that's actually just a really cool little sequence. It's Peter just relaxing. It's like, I'm stuck, and I'm just gonna, you know, talk to my little robot thing. So I love that. Like all the Washington stuff actually was one of my favorite parts, especially with him climbing up the monument and stuff, and it took him a long time, and it's like, alright, well, I have to do this. They think I'm kind of the bad guy a little bit. All of that I thought was a really great sequence. And then, like I said, the ending, absolutely phenomenal. And, you know, he's getting help from his buddy who's, you know, the man in the chair. I love that moment. He's like spins from one computer to the other, like the man in the chair. So I love that moment as well. And apparently, Peter is a lot like Tony, because everybody's finding out who he is, because Ned finds out when he's climbing through his room, and he's like, oh sweet, I got away from, you know, Aunt May. And then he turns around and his buddy's there and it's like, holy crap. And then the end of the movie is like the same thing. He's like, sweet, I got my suit. Everything's great, and she's right behind him. And he was like, "What the f?" And then it cuts off. So I'm excited to see how they do that, especially with the next movie he's gonna be in, being Avengers, and not the next Spider-Man movie. I'm very excited to see how that's gonna play out because it's like that's not him being Spider-Man still. That's like he's going into an Avengers battle. But of course, there's gonna be a bunch of time in between, so they'll have gotten past that. But very curious how they're gonna do that because that's one of the biggest changes. Like people don't know who Spider-Man is for a super, super long time. So I'm excited to see how they utilize the way that they've, kind of switched things up for, the cinematic universe. It's obviously different from, the comics. So excited to see how that plays out with people knowing his identity, his aunt knowing his identity so early on. Because she does find out eventually, but, especially with the way they did it, where it's like the young Aunt May, very different from the comics. She doesn't find out until, she's already old from the beginning in the comics, so she doesn't find out until she's even older. So very interesting to do it where, excuse me, he's been Spider-Man for, a while now, but she finds out and he's still, he's still the really young Peter Parker. So I'm actually excited to see how they do that, but really loved the movie, loved all the references, the spots ripped, straight from the comic books. The action itself is great. I love the costume for this. We got to see the Iron Spider, sort of. I thought for sure they would just do like the flat out version. I don't mind that they changed it. I like the Iron Spider from the comics, but I've always been like, meh. It's cool to see, but it's like, I don't know if I want to see that the whole movie. So I was glad that it wasn't exactly just the red and gold Iron Spider outfit, but it was cool. It was like, it had like the gold lines through it, but it was almost like black and green and like a bunch of different colors in one. I was like, I actually like that. I think that's a cool idea. So excited to see him use that. I'm assuming when we get to Avengers, he'll actually have that suit on. But man, this is a really good movie. Of course, I would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about the movie, at least favorite parts about it. Just where you guys want them to go in the future with this. After everything we got by the end, we have teasers for the Sinister Six. We find out that Michelle is MJ, so she's not Mary Jane. She is, I forgot her last name, but the J is not for Jane. And she's not like, Michelle Jane Watson or anything like that. She's like a totally unique character. She just fills the Mary Jane role, and they just have MJ, of course. So that's an interesting way to do that. I like that idea of kind of sneaking it in there because I was like, okay, well, neither of these characters are Mary Jane, so I was curious. I was like, well, what are they going to do with this Michelle character? Because they made it seem like she was Mary Jane, but she's not. But she does fill that role. So I was like, okay, that's a cool way to do it because I just assumed, like, all right, well, that's not Mary Jane, but it is MJ. So I was like, all right, that's a nice sneaky little way to do that where it kind of keeps you guessing, like, well, what role will she play in the future if Mary Jane is to come along? But she won't, or maybe she will. She could still exist, but really want to know what you guys thought about this film and where you want to see it go. What was your favorite reference that you may have spotted or that you may have seen, if you've watched the YouTube video after you've seen the movie? We'd love to know what your favorite reference was and just your favorite things and least favorite things about the film. So please comment below, let me know. And of course, thanks for watching.